I would say that when I get pictures of him with his two babies, it is heart melting. Like, my heart just melts and I feel so full. It has definitely been the same. That and seeing him see his babies for the first time and how instant connection is just unexplainable. The feeling in my heart that I get.
Balloons, bazookas, boobies, bosoms, boulders, cans, hooters, knockers, melons, honkers, jugs, rack, tatas, tits, torpedoes, guns, bust, doorknobs, coconuts, and our favorite one, the girls. Welcome to the All About Breastfeeding show, where your host, Lori, highlights mothers just like yourself and goes beyond the surface questions and digs deep so they share not only their joys and happiness in their daily breastfeeding life, but also their pain and struggles and how they worked through them.
Episode number 153. Welcome to All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out. I am Lori Jill Eisenstadt, your host of the All About Breastfeeding show, and I am an IBCLC. I help moms with breastfeeding. You are really going to enjoy today's show with my guest, Sarah Fletcher. She will be talking to us about her personal experience with surrogacy. While surrogacy is not new to me, nor is it probably to you, Sarah is going to share how breastfeeding and breast pumping factored into her surrogacy experience. A quick reminder before we start the show. There are ways that you can connect with me. Join the Facebook group by searching for All About Breastfeeding Community. I invited members last week to share their opinion on a new logo I will be using for the All About Mothering membership site that will be opening its doors on April 1st, 2017. I asked members of my friends and family Facebook group about their opinions too. Overall, I received an overwhelming 80-something responses. Thanks so much, everyone who took the time to respond. It was really helpful. Because of all your input, I think I'm going back to the drawing board, and I'm going to be concentrating on a colorful graphic rather than a picture. If you want to see all the responses, you just need to join Facebook group. Once I have a few more logo choices, I will be putting it on this site again and asking for your votes for the favorite one. Since the membership site is opening up in just 3 weeks, this next logo I choose has to stick. So get onto the Facebook group and you can help me make a decision. I will post that in a couple of days. You can also send an email to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/contact if you want to share any feedback about this podcast. If you want to learn more about the work that I do as a lactation consultant, just go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz. For those listeners that are driving right now, I hope this show keeps you company while on the road. For anyone who is at home and can relax, grab a cup of tea or coffee and relax and enjoy the show. Let's get started. Sarah Fletcher is a 26-year-old mom. She is a 2-time surrogate, and she's from Oklahoma City. She has breastfed 2 babies. She'll explain those 2 babies that she was breastfed, and she has breastfed her own 9-year-old daughter. Sarah, I would like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
So this show is all about breastfeeding, and I started to say a little bit about your breastfeeding history, but then I figured I really wanted you to tell your own story. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is just give us a little bit of background about where you grew up and how you grew up.
Okay, well, I kind of grew up everywhere. My dad is a power lineman, so we kind of traveled all over. I was born in Texas, and I lived in Oklahoma for a little bit, and I really grew up in Orlando, and then I ended up back in Oklahoma. So I'm the baby of 6. I have a full-blood brother and sister. I have 2 half-brothers and a stepsister, so big family, but small too. My mom breastfed us 3 and her 3, and then my sister I was like 13 when my sister had her son. So it's never been anything other than me breastfeeding. That's all I've known. So.
Were you old enough to remember your mother breastfeeding her 3?
No, because I'm the baby. I don't remember.
Okay. But 13-year-old is certainly impressionable enough watching your sister.
Yeah.
Well, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about your first breastfeeding experience with your daughter, who is 9 years old now.
Yes, ma'am.
I wonder if 9 years is a long time, and yet it's not, especially sometimes in the very early days of mothering. Some of us remember it really well, and some of us felt like we were in a fog. So I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about what you remember about the early days of breastfeeding, if there's anything in particular that stands out for you.
Oh, yeah. She was definitely hard to breastfeed, but I had support. So that was my main thing. I could get her to nurse on my left side, but my right side, she wouldn't latch on. And just in the hospital, I had to have the nurses help me. And pretty much to get her to latch on my right side, I had to hold her in a football hold. And I think the first 2 weeks were just awful. But after that, it was a piece of cake.
Did she eventually learn to like and enjoy and feed from the right side fairly easy?
She did. I would say probably after a week, I could get her to latch on the right side normally. But, both me and her were learning. I think that was the main thing.
Was there not only the problem of latching on, but did you have any pain or soreness with breastfeeding?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The first, week and a half. It's just when they latch on. And then I had, some sore raw nipples. But other than that.
So who was your support system? You said that you gave birth in a hospital?
Yes. Yeah.
Were there people there to help you with latching her on and getting you started?
Yeah, the nurses were awesome. And then I believe a lactation consultant came in to help too, if I remember right. But the nurses were definitely very willing to help.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
When you came home, are you close to your sister in proximity so that she could help you?
At that point, my sister had moved back to Texas, so I actually didn't have her there, but my mom was there and my mom helped.
So what are some of the things that your mom did in the very early 4 to 6 weeks that you felt were really helpful for you with breastfeeding? And it can be just helping guide you, giving you confidence and support, or it could be whatever other household duties she fulfilled, or if it was feeding you and putting in a load of laundry. What do you feel was most helpful for you?
I think mostly it was just her being there as, support and telling me, it's going to be okay, that she's getting enough to eat. Don't stress that. Just the normal first mom worries. She was there, just support, telling me I'm going to make it through. And she's nursing fine, that, my big worries are not really worries at all.
Yeah, we're always so worried, understandably, because all of a sudden we're responsible for this little person's life, and we can't help but wonder, because it's this invisible container, if they're really getting what they need.
Right. Yeah. And, and she was also working full time too, but, she helped me make sure I would eat and had enough to drink, making sure I had, water or juice at my bedside for the middle of the night.
And throughout your breastfeeding time with your daughter, how long did you breastfeed her for?
I breastfed her for 11 months.
And throughout that time, did you have any hurdles along the way, any problems or issues, or was everything smooth until you weren't breastfeeding anymore?
No, everything was fine, thankfully. I didn't have any problems.
And so what happened at 11 months? Did she wean?
She weaned herself.
And did you bother with formula, or did you go straight to alternative milk?
Right to milk. And honestly, I had a hard time getting her to drink that. I would have to put I don't think you can find it now, but then it was flavoring that had extra vitamins and stuff in it. And that's the only way I could get her to drink regular milk.
Probably because maybe it was sweet.
Yeah. But no, she's never had any formula.
All right. So what I want to hear you tell us your story about surrogacy. So you probably know this already, and maybe in your close circle or extended family, I'm sure a lot of people may have asked you questions, but for most of us, it's still something that many people just don't really know about. So I might be asking you some questions that may sound a little nosy, and if you'll just let me know if it's too much. And my goal really is to help us understand and educate others about the role of a surrogate.
Right, of course, of course.
So let's begin by you sharing with us how this even came about, the idea of becoming a surrogate.
Okay, so it was kind of something that me and my mom had kind of played back and forth with, just kind of talked, like, oh, I would do that. That's something I would do. But when it really got into my head, I was 18 when I got pregnant with my son, and I wasn't in a place to take care of him. And my aunt actually adopted him at birth. I think and he's 7 now. He's 7. So I think just watching the happiness from my aunt and my uncle and how, their family is like complete now, just seeing that really touched my heart, and knowing that that was the best decision that I could have made, not only for me and both of my kids, but for them too. I think that's what gave me the ultimate decision that this was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a surrogate, that was my calling.
So you had about 2-year-old, your daughter was already born?
Opposite. I had my daughter, and then I got pregnant and had a son.
Right, and you had your son.
Right.
And your aunt was local and close to you?
No, actually, I was in Oklahoma. No, I was in Kansas, and she was in Virginia.
Okay. And so because of seeing that relationship, that's what got you interested in becoming a surrogate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then did you go around looking for someone to be a surrogate for, or was it just like one of those serendipity things that it just kind of came to you?
I signed up with an agency out of New Jersey. So it's a surrogacy agency. They check medical records and go through backgrounds to make sure that I would be a good candidate. And then at that point, they give my profile out to intended parents. So.
And are they doing a whole emotional profile for you in addition to health-wise?
Yes. They, you do a psych eval. They do a psych eval, and you have to pass that, obviously. They want to make sure you're stable and this is okay for you.
Okay. And who in your family, were you married at that time?
No, I was not. Single.
So you're single and you have your son, right?
Daughter.
Is she old enough at that point to have a conversation with her about this?
She was 6, I think, when I started looking into this. 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I think she was 6. So I don't think she quite understood everything. But if you got to remember that she went through my pregnancy with my son, and so it's kind of like normal for her. She doesn't really know any different. She knows mommy's pregnant, and then the baby goes to the other family. So it's normal. It was normal for her at that point. I just explained it to her. Do you remember when, I carried Dakota is his name. I carried Dakota, and then we gave them, he was Aunt Libby's. She understands that. Knows this baby's not coming home. So it was really no big deal. She didn't even bat an eye.
And so now when you decide to become a surrogate, you really just have your own self to talk to about it, and say, okay. So in other words, you don't have to run it by anybody. Nobody else has to be in agreement with you about this.
Right. As a single person, yes, that's true. They do want you to have support. I think that's a main thing. They do ask you who is supportive of you, who's going to be there if you need to be on bed rest or whatever. All my family has been nothing but supportive. Now, if I were to be married, then obviously they would do testing on my partner, and he would sign papers. And obviously, because when you're a surrogate, you go into a legal binding contract, and he would need to sign it too. So me as a single woman, yes, it's my decision only.
So what is the next step? after passing all of their exams, the psych eval and the health exam, and then your profile is sent. And do you have any say in who your profile is sent to? In other words, did you have any particular parameters around who you wanted to be a surrogate for, or were you just very open?
Me personally, I was open. At that point, they do send your profile out, and if the intended parents are interested in you, then you'll receive their profile. If you think it's a good match, then they'll set up for like a phone conference or a Skype conference, and then so it's definitely mutual. If you don't feel like that's your match, then that's okay. No pressure. Then they will give you another profile.
And is this something that you can decide that you want to keep local, keep in your country that you live in, or that you say only out of the country that I live in? Definitely.
Yeah. What you want. Yeah. So if I only wanted to carry in my state or locally, then it's very possible to do. You're going to be obviously harder to match, and you might wait until, wait a year or more before you're matched, but it's definitely, you can do it how you want to do it.
So there's a lot of leeway there for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell me what the next thing that happens, like your profile is sent out, and then what happens?
So if your profile is sent out and they like you, like I said, they'll send the intended parent's profile to you. If you think it's a match, well, then you're matched at that point. And then that's when you go to the intended parent fertility clinic, their clinic, and you do a lot of blood work. That's when you do your psych eval, and the doctor will review your medical records. After the medical records, everything's approved and your blood work comes back fine. Obviously, drug testing, the whole 9 yards. That then they call it, you go to legal, which is I will have my lawyer and they will have their lawyer, and we come up with a contract. We barter back and forth until we're both comfortable with the contract, and then we sign it. And then at that point, you send it to the doctor, the reproductive endocrinologist, and only at that point with a legal contract will they go forth with transferring.
And as far as the contract, you don't have to talk money per se, but is talking about money part of the contract, and when they get the baby after you give birth, where do you have to travel to? Is it all those kinds of things?
Right. Yeah. Everything. I mean, every little detail is in that contract. So yes, money would be in there. If you were going to pump and donate your milk, that's usually in there, compensation for that. If they want you to breastfeed, that would be in the contract, but that's not common in surrogacy, really. It's not common at all to breastfeed your surrogate baby.
And how about, I imagine, all information about any kind of relationship that you might have afterwards, or no relationship that you might have afterwards? That's all part of the contract?
That is all part of the contract. Yes, ma'am.
Are you willing to share what your wishes were as far as having any kind of relationship with the intended parents or the baby afterwards, or were you just not wanting any contact?
For me personally, I was okay with whatever the parents were okay with. I felt as if this was not my baby, this is their baby, and I'm comfortable with whatever they were comfortable with. Yes, I would like to have a relationship if that's what they wanted. If they didn't want to, I was okay with that too.
Okay. So now tell us a little bit about, so at some point you do conceive, mm-hmm. and you're going through your pregnancy. So with your intended parents, was there a very close relationship throughout the pregnancy? Was there just like a once every couple of months kind of communication? What was that like for you?
I would say with the first pregnancy, we would touch base once a week, maybe twice a week. I wouldn't say that we were very, very close at that point, but we stayed in contact more than some of the other surrogates and their intended parents, I would say.
And I'm curious to know, what was it like emotionally for you? Because you're going into it and it's sounding like you obviously care and you're doing this wonderful act of kindness. And at the same time, you're also saying you're comfortable with what's going to happen at the end. You're going to separate and give the baby to this intended couple. And you're happy with, you're trying, it sounds like, to meet all of their needs. In other words, if it's very reasonable, whatever they want comes first. And I'm curious to know, did any of that change emotionally as you got closer towards the birth? Any more connected to the baby? Any concerns about that on your part?
No, I don't believe so. I think as a surrogate, when that's the decision you make, you know what the outcome's going to be. You're not coming home with this baby. This isn't your baby. It's not your egg. You learn to disconnect yourself. Not that I didn't care for the baby or my pregnancy or that I didn't enjoy my pregnancy, but the best way I can describe it is that was my niece, somebody that I care about, that I love, but that's not my baby.
What about the people in your life who are around you that I know you said your mom and you had some good support. Was there any kind of weird stuff with if you're working outside the home, or neighbors, or anything that you feel that you have to do to explain to other people what's going to be happening?
The people that I was close with, I would explain to them. If I felt that they deserved an explanation, of course I would explain it. But, the people in passing, they're like, oh, congratulations. Thanks. I don't explain it to everybody who says, congratulations on your new baby. What are you having? What are you going to name it? It's
right.
So
right.
I kept it personal enough that I didn't have to explain it to every passing person in the grocery store.
I imagine even if you didn't necessarily mind people knowing, it still gets to, I know even when I was pregnant at a certain point, I stopped talking about it to certain people, or, they started asking questions and it was already too much. And, this is a baby that I'm carrying that I'm going to keep. But sometimes the questions just get to be too much and too personal. So you just kind of keep certain things at bay, right?
Right. Yeah. Because, they always seem to go to the same question, which I think is sometimes inappropriate. Just all the questions and everybody that's a million and one questions. And I don't have the time to sit here for an hour and explain it to everybody.
Yeah. And it gets, you're even bored hearing yourself say it. So I remember sometimes when someone would say, oh, so who's your doctor, or where are you having your baby? And when I was planning to have my baby at home, I realized that you start engaging people in a long conversation, or they're telling you their opinion that you really don't want to hear. So I found different ways of just answering the question without lying, because I really didn't want to lie. So when they asked, who my doctor was, I gave, let's just say Dr. Smith, like whoever my midwife's backup doctor was, that I would need to see in case I had a problem. I would just give his name. Oh, that's nice. I've heard of him. Because I didn't want to, this is quite a few years ago, and midwives were not as popular, and certainly home birth. So there were, times when I'm like in my head, I just don't have time and I just don't want to start. So you kind of find ways around it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's what, at first you just want to share it with everybody because you're so excited and that's all you want to talk about.
Right.
But then you learn that not everybody is comfortable with what you're comfortable with, and not everybody has the same opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you don't want to hear the negative things, or are you going to miss the baby? Are you going to miss the baby? Is that going to be hard?
Yeah. And that's like it's, that's why I kind of related it to home birth, just in the way that it's something that you're doing that a lot of people are going to have a very strong opinion about. And once you get past the excitement of just wanting to share this really cool thing with everybody, you realize not everybody shares the opinion. Some people, they take that conversation 10 steps too deep, or you just, you're kind of done talking about it. You don't have the time.
Exactly.
Have you heard that Phoenix, Arizona is blessed with an amazing birthing center? Baby Moon Inn Birth Center is the best option for families who want access to midwifery care in and out of a hospital setting. You can experience birth in a comfortable home-like setting where natural birth is the focus. Laboring in water, being able to walk outside during labor, and enjoy the beautiful garden. This is what birth can be like for you. There is so much more to learn about Baby Moon. The staff would love to have the opportunity to meet you and would like to extend an invitation for you to attend a free Choices in Childbirth class and a tour of the birth center. All you need to do is call 602-314 602-314-7755. That's 602-314-7755 and ask for the tour dates. You can also go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/podcast. And on the right-hand side of the page, you will see a link that will bring you to the calendar, and you can sign up for the tour yourself. When you come in for the tour, make sure that you tell them you found out about it from the All About Breastfeeding podcast, and you will be given a very lovely free gift. What I really want to have you share with us is your experiencing, and I know that you were a surrogate twice, so let's go to your first baby. How was it all discussed and decided on breastfeeding the baby? Were you breastfeeding and pumping? Were you sending the milk to them? So tell us how all this worked out for you.
Okay, so you know how we were talking about contracts and how usually that's all squared away in contracts. Well, in our contract, it stated that I would pump for them, for him and baby, but I had an emergency C-section for high blood pressure. I had her at 38 3, so it wasn't, she was full term, but I knew I would have a C-section from my previous C-sections. But him being internationally, he missed the birth. In the state of Oklahoma, we do post-birth orders. And so therefore, I was still legally her parent. I was on her birth certificate. So at that point.
So the plan was for the intended parent to have enough time to be able to travel to get to you and be here for the birth. And that didn't happen.
Right.
Okay.
When I had her, he wasn't here, and he didn't get here until like 3 days after. So I was taking care of the baby until he got there. So I just made sure right before I had her that it was comfortable with him, that I went ahead and nursed her while I was in the hospital to give her, so that she would get all the colostrum and she wouldn't have to have any formula. I wanted her to have the benefits. And then if I was going to pump, when he got there, I wanted to it would help my milk come in. It wasn't planned. It wasn't in the contract or anything that I would nurse her. It just kind of last minute, will help my milk come in, and this is what's best for her. If I'm going to be caring for her for 3 days, up every 2 hours in the middle of the night, it was.
Right. So how did that go the first few days? And this is probably a question you do get asked a lot, but I have, thousands of listeners, and sometimes I like to ask the questions that I know is on everyone's mind. And, and that big question is that emotional attachment that you have. Like you said, you think of it as this baby as a wonderful, beautiful niece that you love, but now you give birth and you have the baby attached to the breast and you're nursing. So that brings it to, I would think, a deeper level of connection. So tell me if that's what happened with you, or if you were just able to just breastfeed and have it be for what it was at the moment in time, and not really have any kind of deeper emotional attachment that got in your way.
I just tried to keep it right in my head. I'm not going to say that it didn't make it harder. The connection was more than if I wouldn't have. I will agree to that. But like I said, it's not normal for surrogates to breastfeed their surrogate babies. But I just kept it right in my head. I knew that this is what's best for the baby, and this isn't my baby. But it was fun, and I guess fun's the word, but it was enjoyable,
And did this beautiful baby decide to nurse from both sides from the beginning?
Oh my goodness. As soon as after the C-section, they put her for skin to skin, and she latched herself. Like, I didn't even have to show her. It was like night and day.
Wow. It's nice that you got to experience that.
Yeah.
So now tell me what it's like when your milk is now in and your breasts are filling with milk. The plan at that point was, you were going to be pumping from the very beginning, so you were going to be filling in your breast. But again, now it's different because you have a baby at the breast. So what was that like? And at what point did the intended parent get there? And then what was the next decision made about breastfeeding this beautiful baby, if anything did change?
So up until he got there, the plan was to pump. And I had even tried to pump in between feedings just to have something ready for when he got there so that he could feed her. But I wasn't getting anything from the pump. The pump did nothing for me. So when he got there, which was our first time meeting, because like I said, he's international and he wasn't able to come for the transfer or anything. He was just amazed by how calm she was and how well she was doing on the breast. He is also a believer that breast is best.
So this intended parent is a male and did not have a female with him?
Correct. I carried for a single father, a single male.
Okay. All right.
So at that point, we had rented him a house, a fully furnished house that was literally 2 streets away from my house. And it was a big enough house. He asked me if I would go stay with him and nurse the baby and help him kind of nanny. You know, he's never been a dad before. And so he's scared too. He's nervous. He asked me to go stay with him and nurse the baby.
So how was that for you? Because now you're in the same neighborhood, but you have a daughter and you have a home of your own. And now you give birth in the hospital and you leave the hospital and you go live in a house a couple of blocks away. Was that okay for you?
I'm not going to lie. I was very kind of, what am I doing? Like, should I be doing this? But it worked out okay. It worked out okay. A lot better than I thought it would be emotionally. My daughter still went to school. I was still able to go get her from school. I still took her to soccer and gymnastics. And, you know, it didn't really mess up my normal home life other than I wasn't there at night.
And this gave you an opportunity to get to know the father and perhaps to share some of your pearls of wisdom about baby care.
Yes. He was very hands-on. He wanted to learn everything. That was fun.
So how long did that situation go on with the rented house and him staying close to you?
I think he was here for about 2 weeks until we got the birth order done, the new birth certificate, the Social Security card, and all that. He was here for 2 weeks, and then that was when he asked me if I would consider going back to Russia for the summer with him.
Why was he asking that? Why do you think?
I think he was nervous about switching to formula, I think is probably the biggest thing. And I think he's seen that I was comfortable with her and she was comfortable with me and he trusted me. I think another part of it was that he didn't have the help that he needed at home yet. He
probably spent time with you and realized how much more work it was than perhaps he thought before.
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
So tell me on a logistical and an emotional way how you came to make the decision to travel to Russia.
It was more so support of my family than anything. I think I was still nervous. I still sometimes can't believe I really went. Well, the thing, it was summertime and I ended up pulling my daughter out of school the last 2 weeks of school. So she went with me to New York while we did passports and all that. And then we went to Russia for the summer.
And all the while, you're not pumping, you're breastfeeding.
Yes.
Okay. So now you go to Russia. And how long did you stay in Russia?
I was there until she was 4 months old. So I think I was actually there for 3 months.
So what was your living situation like in Russia?
We stayed in his house. My daughter had her room and I stayed with the baby.
I have to say, it's like, I'm listening to your story and I was like, not that you need my approval or not, but I was like thinking, okay, so cool. So surrogate, and she's able to separate the two and this is not her baby. And so Sarah's doing really well up to this point. And I'm just really talking about it from an emotional point and like putting myself in your spot, not judging, just I can't help but think about how I would feel. That's where my brain keeps going.
Yeah.
Now you're breastfeeding the baby in the hospital. Now you're breastfeeding the baby while you're at home. And now you go to Russia. I mean, I can only imagine that you're really now forming a bond with this baby.
Like I said before, I just really tried to keep it straight in my head. I'm not going to say that it wasn't emotionally hard.
Yeah. Was there any time that, in the middle of the night that you Did you ever say, gosh, I just don't know if I could leave now? I'm so attached to this baby, or that leaving will cause you some set of emotions that you probably didn't anticipate when you were pregnant?
Yeah, that was my big part. I think it was more so me thinking about leaving and thinking about having to say goodbye to her and her father. I think that was like the most emotional part, was just thinking about leaving. Once I actually went home, I had my one good cry when we left, and then I was fine. Since he's great at sending me updates and everything, so it was perfectly fine.
And who was caretaking for the baby? Was the father in a job where he needed to leave and you were watching the baby all day, or did he bring in a nanny or someone to help, or another family member?
He did eventually bring in a nanny about a month before I left, just to kind of get her comfortable, to learn the baby and stuff. He did work a lot, and sometimes he leaves, days at a time.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about it for you. Like I said, I was putting myself in your spot, not judging, just thinking how I would feel and deal with it. And then I was also thinking about the baby who's, forming this bond with you and breastfeeding. We always talk about the bond that moms have with babies when they're breastfeeding. And then so I was thinking about how it would be for the baby when you left.
Well, I'll tell you this. We started weaning her to formula about a month before I left, and she turned into a lazy baby and did not want to nurse at all during the day. So pretty much for the last month that I was there, I was able to step back, not be her 100% caretaker while the nanny was there. The nanny was able to feed her formula during the day when she wouldn't nurse, and then at night she decided she would nurse. But after giving her that first bottle, maybe the second bottle, she wouldn't nurse no more.
So then tell me what happened with your body and your breasts when you're not nursing her nearly as much. Did you have to put work into weaning, lowering your supply?
Yeah, I did. I think it only lasted a couple days because she was still nursing at night. So I remember the first couple of days I would get full and I would just hop in the shower and hand express them. But that's about all I did. My supply significantly lowered just from her nursing at night.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that's baby number 1. How old is that baby now?
She will be 2 at the end of March.
Very cool. And so now you decided to become a surrogate again, right?
Yes, actually, while I was in the hospital with the first baby, he asked me to carry for him again. So it's actually, I did a sibling journey. So I had the second surrogacy journey was baby brother to my first.
So how long a period of time did you gave your body some time to recover?
We didn't transfer until 14 months postpartum. So a little over a year.
And so you knocked out a lot of that other stuff that you went through in the beginning with the agency and you did a contract, but with finding the right person and all that.
Right.
And at this point, the father is still in Russia?
Yes.
Okay. If you're not comfortable answering this, you don't need to. But when you went to Russia and you had this extended nursing time that you had not necessarily planned, was there additional money paid for that?
Yes. Yeah. He compensated me for being, pretty much he covered my lost wages.
So the second pregnancy, everything went fine?
Yeah, everything went great. I would say, me and the father had a closer relationship, now that we've obviously got to know each other a lot better. So I think, that alone was a lot less stressful than the first pregnancy. Everything in the pregnancy went fine up until 36 weeks, I think. And then I started having blood pressure issues again. So I was on bed rest for a couple days. And then I went in on New Year's for an NST and we had a New Year's baby.
And was that just this New Year's?
Yes.
Okay. And everything with that went okay with the cesarean section? Everything was fine, you and the baby?
Yep, everything was good.
So now that was early also. So did he not make that birth either?
He didn't make that birth either.
This poor guy. Well, yeah, I guess when it's international, it makes it that much more difficult.
Yeah.
Did you make any different arrangements for feeding the baby the second time around than you had the first time?
The plan was for me to breastfeed with this one.
And that was just, I mean, you had done it before, so it was an easy place for you both to go to.
Right. And he was also hoping that I would go back with him back to Russia this time. But circumstances are different in my life, and I wasn't able to do so. So, I mean, he was bummed out about it, but so I was still willing to breastfeed the baby, help him while he was here doing legal work before he went back home.
And so how long was he here?
He was here about 25 days, so almost a month.
And are you doing any pumping and sending milk to him? Or when he left, did you wean from breastfeeding?
I had a couple bags that I sent with him, like for the plane ride. But other than that, he just went to formula.
See, I get all, personally, I just get like all emotional. I'm trying to think, like I've been breastfeeding this baby and now they're leaving and now I have all this milk in my boobs. So what did you do?
I pumped about maybe 3 times a day for a couple days. And then I went down to 2 times, once. I really only pumped when I felt engorged or pain, really.
Did you have to take anything, ingest any herbs or do cabbage leaves or anything to help dry you up?
I didn't do anything other than pump when I was uncomfortable.
Wow, you're actually pretty lucky with that. Most moms I know have to do a lot more of that when they're weaning from breastfeeding or pumping, especially so early on.
Yeah, I got very lucky, very lucky. And I had planned on pumping until I go back to work and kind of donating it, the human milk for human babies. But life kind of got crazy and it's a lot of work to pump.
Yes.
So it just didn't work out as planned, but that's okay.
So tell me what you got out of this experience. I'm curious to know that for the reasons that you went into it, did the same reasons stay the whole time you've been a surrogate twice now, or did they change?
Lori, I would say that when I get pictures of him with his 2 babies, it is heart melting. Like my heart just melts and I feel so full. It has definitely been the same. That and seeing him see his babies for the first time and how instant connection is just unexplainable, the feeling in my heart that I get.
And how important is it to you ultimately? Again, it wasn't your decision. You were willing to do whatever he wanted. But how important is it for you, or in the end, do you really feel, are you grateful that he gave you the opportunity to breastfeed or just get this baby off to a good start with your milk?
Yes, I'm very grateful. I'm thankful for the memories and the connection, because I think it's made me and him closer, too, as a friendship as well.
And I'm also thinking, at this point, your daughter's 9, so she's had an opportunity. This is going to stick with her also. And I love the fact that she's able to understand and see what you're doing, as well as watch you as a girl, as a daughter, as a child, be able to watch you breastfeed a baby, because most of us, we're sons or daughters, don't have an opportunity to watch our moms breastfeed. And so for many reasons, this is going to leave a very interesting and positive impression on your daughter, in addition to the breastfeeding.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's funny because when I go and pick her up from school, all her teachers, they see that I'm pregnant and they're like, she told me you're a surrogate. Like, how cool is that? And so she talks about it. She tells people.
That's very cool. So what is in your future? Do you feel that you might be a surrogate again?
In my heart, I don't think I will be. I'm done having babies for myself anyways. I have a feeling that he will want another one, and I think he'll ask me. for my safety and the safety of the baby, I don't think it's best because of my blood pressure issues, and I've had them both a little early.
And it's also is it your fourth cesarean?
Yes, it's my fourth cesarean.
Yeah, so for cesareans, high blood pressure, sometimes those medical issues start to add up.
Yeah, and after this baby, I actually had to go back to the ER. I was sent home on blood pressure meds and had to go back to the ER and have them doubled. I'm off of them now, thankfully, because some women don't get off of them. So yeah, I think for my health and the health of the baby, I think that my uterus is retired.
I like that. My uterus is retired. Do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share with my listeners? And my listeners are pretty widespread. They're like women between like the ages of 20, 25, and 45. And some have not had any babies yet. Some are pregnant. Some are new moms. And there's also quite a bit of lactation professionals who listen to this show. So what lessons learned that you feel, or just comments that you feel like you would like to share with us?
Surrogacy does not have a good reputation. And I really wish that there was more good stories out there and that the good stories were shared more than the bad. I think that with breastfeeding surrogate babies is not normal in the surrogacy world. And I can understand why, coming from intended parents, but there's no reason why it can't become normal if that relationship is there. But I think education is the biggest thing, education.
And I think that you're really a wonderful example, a very positive story. And that's why I'm thrilled that you were willing to share something so incredibly personal, in that you're able to share about the surrogacy, carrying another baby, and just taking that a few steps further and talking to us about providing milk and breastfeeding the baby. And I think that it's just a positive and an interesting story for people to hear. The mainstream public nowadays just doesn't know or really think too much about is that years ago, there were lots of moms who breastfed other babies. We used to say that they were wet nurses and or cross nursing. And so wet nurses were typically paid. So when anybody who's listening to this show and thinking, my goodness, she was paid to breastfeed, I want them to know that for thousands and thousands of years, there were many women. It was a profession being a wet nurse, and they were typically paid, and some were paid very well. There's lots in the history about other women who were not paid or not paid well. There's a whole historical factor to this, but there definitely there was a whole business, and there were literally, money exchange. There were people running wet nursing businesses. So it's all very interesting. So I'm really thrilled that you were able to do this show so we could bring it out in the open, talk about it, and gives me the opportunity to say that, wet nursing is we're probably one of the oldest professions for women.
Yeah, you're right. It has gone on. And, and it's in a lot of other countries, it's still very normal. Very normal.
Yes. And so I just like for people to kind of think outside the box. And I think that you are one very generous soul. I make no judgment when any part that I like that makes me like emotional is just the emotional aspect when I put myself in your situation and think, how would I do with that?
Yeah. And, it was very emotional for me, but thankfully, I kept it right in my head, and I do have a very good support system. So.
And you have given another wonderful person on this planet 2 children.
I have, and they're an awesome, perfect family.
Wonderful. Well, Sarah, in case anybody wants to touch base with you about surrogacy and talk to you about it, if you're open to it, you can share your email address or whatever your contact info. If it's not something that you want to see happen, then you don't need to do that either.
I mean, I'm on Facebook. Just look me up under Sarah Fletcher, and I'm in Oklahoma City. You should be able to find me.
Okay, well, that's great.
All right.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time and for you sharing something, like I said, so personal. Thank you so much, Sarah Fletcher.
Thank you.
I hope you really enjoyed listening to Sarah's story as much as I did. I want to thank Sarah so much for answering my request for moms who have nursed another baby. I actually received quite a few responses, but some people, I totally understand, just wanted to talk about it privately as they are not ready to talk publicly about this. Stay tuned though, as I will have a few more shows on this topic with moms who are willing to publicly share their story. Until the next show, bye-bye.